Hi everybody, this is Dr. Lisa Ann Homick from Homick Advanced Chiropractic, and this is Brain Snob episode 105. Welcome, and I want everybody to be a brain snob. It's not an insult, it's a high compliment. It means you know enough about your brain to give yourself amazing life experiences. And today I'm introducing to you my new series for my Patreon channel, Countdown Live Up. This series is called Cove-id Chameleon, Discover the Real Reason for Sickness. And I'm doing this because at 6 months of living through this scenario pushed upon us has really taught me some things. Maybe it's been the best teacher I've had in the last 20 years. And I want you to I want to share my experience with you so you can have your own health on your own terms. My whole point of being here is to expose people to life-saving information, challenge you to live in that life-saving manner, changing your lifestyle, giving yourself the best lifestyle for the situation, and also to adjust spines at all times. This is my mission statement. It's framed over there, and you see it first thing by the doorway when you walk into my office. I've paraphrased it a little bit, but if you watch my orientation video, I explain it in more depth of what my personal mission statement is. And my calling is to help you live your calling, and I choose to do it through health freedom. You can free yourself, and the purpose of this series, Cove-id Chameleon, is to free you, because I'm getting a little bit tired of the fear. I'm tired of the misinformation, and that's all there is out there, misinformation. And we're doing great in the office. The people coming are happy. I hope they're staying happy, because it's iffy. Every day I wake up, I wonder, how am I feeling? Because I wake up with a pit in my stomach, or I feel nauseated, or I feel a headache coming on, and I say to myself, what is this day going to be like? Now in the end, I get perky. Sometimes it takes me a little while to walk around the house, get my body moving, and getting ready for the day. But in the end, it's up to me, and I've decided I'm going to have the best day ever, each and every day. And that includes not living in fear, not worrying about what's happening on the other side of the world. I also, there's a lot of weird things happening in the news, yes. And I'm thankful that my neighborhood and my town, we're fairly calm and cool and collected. We are not dealing with what's happening on other areas of the country. And part of me wonders if the news is just streaming all this junk into our households to keep that cortisol level up, so we're in that fight or flight, because that's what's killing us, the fight or flight. And I resist. I refuse. And I want you to feel the same way. I want you to resist these ways of wrecking our health, because you've got the power within you. You've got the healing power, and nobody else should be influencing that, other than they should be helping you promote it. I want to be around people who want to promote inner health and share the excitement with each other and help each other through this time. And you can only do that with support and positive thinking, as well as being able to discern the truth. And part of that is understanding my reason for putting on this Cove-id Chameleon series on my Patreon channel. So it's Cove-id Chameleon, Discover the Real Reason for Sickness. So I've got some chapter ideas in my mind for this video. I wonder, would you consider rejecting the virus theory? Is it really beneficial to avoid each other? is there actually something else out there causing a mass sickness? What happened to our American right to a second opinion? And have we been slowly sickened in some way, leaving us oblivious to what real health always is? Now, some of these things have been part of my mission statement for 20 years, and this whole pandemic scenario that we're living through has really gotten me to be serious and look at my purpose, and can I be real hard with it? Meaning, am I going to stick to it? Am I going to actually expand it and help people understand that it's your health on your terms, and you have the power, it's at your fingertips. But the one thing I want to introduce today is that school has started. My son has been in school since September 7th, and the rest of the high school and the middle school and the elementary school, they're slowly coming into school two days a week, virtual online. My son goes 5 days a week for 2.5 hours because he's in a different career track program at school. So I've been seeing how he's handling these changes, and I'm part of a few different Facebook groups across the state, and I'm reading about what other parents are dealing with. And I'm going to tell you, it's not pleasant. The children are not in the typical school experience. So these kids are trying to make sense of it. They know what school is supposed to be like because they were in school last year. They know they're supposed to have face-to-face contact with their teachers, and they should have plenty of time to interact with their teachers, and that's not happening. And then you're trying to upload homework on different internet sites. It depends on what your school decides to use, and some teachers use different ones, and it's becoming a totally chaotic thing. And the children are also spending more time worrying about doing the right thing. Now, children look to us for guidance. They look to us for stability, and we're giving them crap. Total crap. I want to go back a few decades to talk about the ACE study, because we're repeating it right now, and I don't like it. What's the ACE study? ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experience. So there was a study, and it began in 1995 and 1997, following kids into adulthood and seeing what happens to them when they are experiencing adverse childhood events. And some of the examples are physical abuse, dealing with sexual abuse, dealing with divorce, separation from a parent, or having a parent who's dealing with a chronic illness, such as a mental illness or a substance abuse disorder. This study kept track of kids dealing with these types of adverse events. Some had more than one. They categorized what happened when you have more than one adverse event and how it affects their future adulthood life. And they were looking at the what kind of diseases experienced later on in life because of this ACE, adverse childhood event. And they're focusing on chronic diseases such as heart issues, cancer, strokes, diabetes. And there's a correlation where the more adverse childhood events you had, the more disease you have in adulthood. Now, the children of today, are we setting them up for a crappy, sick adulthood? First of all, we're telling them that they could stand next to somebody and that person can make them sick. That we are a danger to each other. And I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. And for a child to grow up with that idea in their mind, that is not the way our children should have to live. And that should not be how their future is. Like I said, they look to us for guidance. They look to us for stability. Now, these kids who were studied from the ACE study, the thing I found interesting is they took a group of adults who had these types of adverse events. They grew up with more poverty. They grew up lacking a parent. They grew up with abuse. And they took a group who were successful. They grew up, they went to college, they became professionals, they have stable lives, and they are taking care of themselves financially and mentally. And they were looked at their cortisol levels, and the cortisol level is that fight or flight hormone. 50% of these adults who overcame their adversity and became professionals, successful, stable, 50% of them have high cortisol levels. Meaning what they learned in their experiences growing up were biological, physiological, and as adults they still have that physiological cortisol secretion, that high level of cortisol. We know that cortisol is associated with that fight or flight, high insulin, blood sugar out of control, a chronic illness, chronic inflammation, diabetes. The good side, though, is that the other 50% had normal cortisol levels. So I want to take into account and be positive and optimistic and show that it can be turned around. These kids can turn around their situations and have a healthy adulthood. I guess that all depends on us. What are we going to teach our children? What are we going to reinforce with our children? What are we going to expose them to so they don't have that high risk of disease later in life because they grew up with fear and uncertainty and these ideas that they cannot control their surroundings. That's the whole thing. When you're a little kid, you're not in control. When you're a little kid, you are at the mercy of the adults around you, and you learn to survive. And you assume that's the way life is. And some kids, when they grow up, they have a hard time transitioning to the adulthood phase of their life where they have control and they can do positive things and they can make a difference in their own life. It goes both ways. 50% don't have that risk of worse health, and 50% still did. I want that to be a lesson to us to realize that what we do matters. Now, from a chiropractic point of view and teaching people the BFA protocol, Brain First Always, I focus on that nervous system stuckness where your brain will learn what you expose it to. And sometimes it's negative, and you will perpetuate the hormones and the neurotransmitters in a way that give you poor health. But it can be turned around. The brain can unlearn, and you can teach new things to your brain. That's the whole point of the BFA protocol, Brain First Always. And in this pandemic scenario, it is very, very, very crucial that we spread the word and encourage people to realize nothing's set in stone. You have the ability to reshape your brain. You reshape your experiences. So I would prefer we're not teaching fear to our children. I would prefer we teach them how to handle it, accept it, but turn it around for the better. How are we going to do that? My office is right next to the YMCA. When I go and leave the office in the afternoon, it's the same time as the parents coming to pick up the preschool children. And they're standing in a line down the street, 6 feet apart, with masks, waiting their turn to pick up their child. And when I look at that, because I'm walking out to my car, it's in the parking lot or right next to the YMCA, I cringe. I cringe and I say, why is this still going on? Why? Not only are they waiting in line, it's not my turn yet to see my own child, but I have to stand and be dealing with it, accepting it, and that's just the way it is. And why? Why? The children are delighted to see their parents. I'm glad for that. They reconnect, they see them, they hug them, and they get to go home and live in a normal household without that frightening scenario where we gotta clean everything, you can't stand next to me, and we've restricted the activities that children can do. I find that horrible. So part of the time I'm imagining when my dad was in the army during World War II. He didn't leave this country. It was just about near the end when he was drafted. But this is what it was like for 4 years, give or take. People waiting for their family. Their families are gone overseas. They're waiting. They're trying to live day in and day out. The economy was certainly affected. The social structures were affected. Families are listening to the radio for updates like we're doing now. This is what we're doing now. People are not permitted to see their family members. They're waiting patiently. They're trying to humor the system. And what was it like this during World War II? This left people with a constant state of stress. Now, we did survive. Those who returned from war, God bless you. The rest of us who are alive today because we were born later on, and we overcame it. But what are the repercussions to our biology, our physiology, our own chemicals coming from our brain? This is such a disservice to our children. We are in charge, and we have to assert our sovereignty over our personal lives, our autonomy, and over our own health. So I invite you to look at my series, Cove-id Chameleon, Discover the Real Reason for Sickness. I know people are sick. Why are they sick? Can we put other theories on this little conveyor belt? Can we discuss other things besides a virus that just seemed to hop around the world? Now, during the Spanish flu of 1918, illness crept up everywhere where there wasn't even traveling, where people were not exposed to each other, supposedly exposed. How do we explain that? How about the studies done in Boston in 1918 where they tried to spread the Spanish flu? They couldn't cause other people to be sick. And this is in the archives of research studies. We could not purposely make people sick during the 1918 year, that year portion of that flu pandemic. I have an elderly gentleman patient who I'm so thankful to talk to him, because what did he say to me? He says, I don't follow any of this. He says, I remember the Hong Kong flu of 1968. It was nothing. I'm hanging on to that comment because that's genuine, a gem that I'm hanging on to, because this gentleman said, it was fine. It was fine. I want today to be fine. I want it to be fine with you. I want it to be fine with me. And that's why I am inviting you to consider rejecting the virus disease theory. Now, in all my travels and experiences, I never really cared about viruses. I never really cared about communicable diseases. Not on my radar. Why? Because we heal. We have the healing power. And I understand what causes death. That's when your tissue resilience is at its breaking point. There's no more resilience left. And I talk about that in other videos. And I think I should talk about that some more, in more depth in this series. But I was never concerned. I'm like, okay, the viruses, they come and go. People get better. And now that it's 2020, I'm asking myself, what are they really? Honestly, what are they really? It's time for me to take the dive and look at history and look at all the examples where we don't have the exact information of what a virus is. I can tell you it's a protein. Why are we afraid of a protein? Oh, so would you consider it? Would you ask yourself the questions you've never asked yourself before? Because now it matters. It didn't in the past. It didn't. Is it really beneficial to avoid each other? People in the nursing homes not seeing their families, that's cruel. That is very cruel. People in hospice, are you kidding me? And even for people who are not in a dire health situation, why are we avoiding each other? Why? Is there actually something else out there causing a mass sickness? Well, I know right now fear is very contagious. And our cells communicate to each other. And we already know this in nature. Trees communicate to each other. Women communicate to each other because they all have their periods at the same time when they're in close proximity with each other. We know that. So what else are our bodies saying to each other? And boy, I want to be around positive-minded people because I just don't want to keep reinforcing the depressing news. I don't want it. I don't need it. I don't want to expose myself to it. And when it does happen, I work very hard at keeping it out of the depth, the deepness, the depth of my cells at the mitochondrial level, at the tiniest level. I don't want that energy in my body. So I'm talking real tiny stuff. I mean, we're talking about viruses. Let's talk about the cells and what the cells are really capable of. And I want to share that information with you because our cells can be very resilient, but we have to give our cells a fair shot. We cannot be inundating our body with stress, and that is important. Now, what happened to our American right to a second opinion? Why do we only have one CDC? I don't like that idea. We should have more than one CDC. We are allowed a second opinion, and all of a sudden, no, we're not. That is a huge flaw in our American system right now. Whatever it is, through government, the CDC was created by a presidential administration. There's no legislative process here. We don't get a vote, and there is a problem. And that's a problem with our American government right now. We are being deprived of our right to a second opinion. And I think people need to stand up and demand their freedom to seek a second opinion. And the last thing, have we been slowly sickened in some way, leaving us oblivious to real health? Now, I can go back decades and decades, and you and I both know we've been tolerating bad health. We've been tolerating diabetes. We've been tolerating heart conditions. We just pile on the medications. We don't tell people how they became unhealthy, and we don't tell them how to get healthy. We just say, oh, it happened. Cut back on your fat and do some exercising. But, oh, it's not going to work. Why bother? It's not going to work. We're going to put you on that statin anyway. When diet and exercise doesn't work, you have this alternative. I'm tired of that. We have lost our way. And the sickness of today has actually been festering for decades. And I'm going to tell you there's nothing new right now other than a blindness to the toxins in our soil, our air, our food, the toxins we deliberately take, called medications, and the what we've done to our food, processing it. We're setting all that aside, trying to blame a virus that we cannot even prove is there. And the CDC admits it. The CDC has admitted there is no isolated coronavirus. What have we let the leaders do to us? So I encourage you, get on the Patreon channel, Countdown Live Up. Watch my entire BFA protocol video course. And you also have access to my new series, Cove-id Chameleon, Discover the Real Reason for Sickness. And I think this information needs to get out there. It's not going to happen in the news outlets. It's not going to happen at Trump's press conference or Cuomo's press conference. It's going to come out neighbor telling neighbor. And that's my purpose here. I want you to tell your family and your friends why they can breathe easier and why they can set themselves free so they don't have to be fearful. And every news story I'm reading is stay away from crowded events. Don't go here, don't go there. I'm tired of it. And my purpose is to help you share the information on a manageable level of understanding. And you can understand it. I can understand it. You can share it. It is not rocket science. I'm sorry. Don't worry about what's happening out in space. We've got to get control of what's happening right here. I'm laughing because we gotta have healthy humor. It's good for the immune system. It's good for the nervous system. And we have to stay positive. And that's my goal here. I want to give you good news because the good news is out there and I want to share it with you. Go to my Patreon channel. I thank you for listening. The main objective of this video is, what are we doing to our children? Because we're laying a foundation that could be damaging. And from a chiropractic point of view, we know that when we adjust children, they do well. We adjust their spines so the stuff doesn't stay stuck in the memory banks of the spinal cord, the memory banks of the brain. The brain memorizes everything, and it takes early sickness, early injury, and uses that as a survival mechanism in the brain. But we don't want it to go haywire. That survival system works wonderfully, but we've got to balance it out. We got to clean it out of unserving information, and we've got to give our brain useful information. And that's the whole point of the BFA protocol. Brain first always. Chiropractic is the foundation of it. And the things you do in your life with your diet and your mental activities, how you help your brain stay healthy, these are all the important things that you can do for yourself. And it's low tech, easy access for you. I think I've talked enough. It's almost 30 minutes here. And if you made it this long, I know you are one of those super interested, curious types. And remember, there's no health without curiosity. You've got to have that curiosity, or you're just going to have a stagnant health situation. Thanks for watching.